All right, here we go. It is episode 75 of a brand new Stick to Hockey Live. Jason Bertidis, along with from the fourth period, thefourthperiod.com, at A DeMarco25 on Twitter. There he is, Anthony DeMarco. What's going on, Ant? Cold up in
Uh,
Canada?
yeah, it's pretty cold. This is always a troubling thing with us because we're in Celsius and you're in Fahrenheit. So when I tell you stuff, I don't know if you know what the fuck it means. So that's the whole issue we run into. But today it is -3 Celsius. So whatever that is in Fahrenheit, that's how cold it is here.
Yeah, we're about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's
Yeah,
it's pretty
let's.
chilly. And it's pretty blustery and windy. I
Oh, so
wanted to
you guys it's 30 degrees, so it's almost the same thing actually. So
yeah.
here it's 26 for you guys.
Okay. Yeah, so we're relatively close.
Yeah.
Yours is going to consistently and get rapidly much worse
Oh
for the
yeah.
most part than ours will. But it's hockey season. I was walking out of the rink last night, walking out to the parking lot to head home, and Torch is pulling out in his truck. He rolls out his window. He goes, "It's cold." I go, "It's winter. It's supposed to be cold." But you know what's cold, Ant? Let's start here in this episode. Goal scoring has gone really cold. Now, during the 5-game win streak, the Flyers averaged what over 4 goals a game. They scored 22 goals in the 5 games. Now all of a sudden, they've scored 4 goals in 4 games, and they have a record of 1-3 in those games. Oddly enough, the game where they technically didn't score a goal, they won because they won it in the shootout with Forster. But 1 goal a game ain't going to cut it. And even though Konechny got his 12th last night, this is going to be a scoring by committee team, and the committee is not in session.
Yeah, I mean, then that's kind of what was to be expected of this team, along with a poor defense. But the defense has overachieved by a wide margin. But what we're seeing now is that the offense is really showing what it is, and that's an offense with the exception of Travis Konechny, you don't really have a top line player on this team. Like I think Joel Farabee's had a really nice season. Owen Tippett has been streaky. Started off cold, went through a nice stretch, maybe now back in a cold stretch. Couturier, I think, has been pretty good for him for what we were expecting him to be after missing how many months? What was it? Almost 24 months of play. And even Atkinson, but those guys aren't offensive machines in terms of generating. But I think you've seen some disappointments. Like obviously, Bobby Brink has been up and down. Morgan Frost has been in and out of the lineup. Pretty big regression for Scott Lawton this season. I know a lot of people were responding to my tweet about what we'd want to talk about, and is Scott Lawton playing hurt? I think a lot of it has to do with him playing down the middle so much this season, which we know has always limited his offense. But the cream eventually rises to the top, and I think that's what we're seeing with the offense right now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the guys that you need to score. Atkinson's got the 8 goals, but he's not. The thing is about Atkinson, I just don't even see many great chances lately.
Yeah.
And with Tippett, the one thing we talked about that he needed in his progression as an NHL player was more finish and getting pucks on net. He's got his shooting percentage is 10. If he could get that shooting percentage like 13.5 to 14.5, and he's a 35 plus goal scorer, but it's always residing at 10. I don't know if he just is trying too hard to be perfect and pick a corner and he's missing the net too much or what it is.
Well, he's always been a volume shooter, and that has been kind of a hallmark of his going back to his time in the OHL. And I think with Tippett, he just tries to get the puck on the net as much as possible, and then eventually they will start to go in. But I don't think that he's someone because he has an underrated shot, in my opinion. I think that with his size, he could take it to the net more than he does, and he doesn't always have to shoot it from distance. And I think if he uses his size and his speed to power his way to more dangerous areas, we will see him maybe translating that that volume shooting into a higher shooting percentage, like you said, because right now the chances are there. But I mean, you'd even like to see his overall process tick up a bit. He still is process wise has been one of the better forwards this season, but I think that overall with the talent that he has, you would expect it to be a bit more, and we've seen him be capable of more as well.
Yeah, we've kind of heard that same terminology when it comes to Tyson Forster, who the Flyers need to get some goals from as well. He's got the 1 goal that was the power play goal against Vegas, and he has the shootout one, which I guess technically doesn't count as a goal on his ledger for this season, but they need to get more offense out of Tyson Forster as well. I know he's been good in the other areas and structurally and those kind of things, but those things have to be part of his game along with the goal scoring. Like we almost took, I guess, the goal scoring element with him for granted, and it just hasn't happened this year. And it's great that he's playing good in other zones, and he'll have to carry that when he is scoring goals, but he's got to get the scoring goals. When this team's averaging a goal a game, I mean, that you're not going to win in the NHL scoring one goal. You're not going to score win a lot in the NHL scoring just 2 goals. It's a race to 4 league.
Yeah, and they've been happy with Tyson Forster's game, but obviously you want the goal scoring to come. He only has that 1 goal in the season, and right, he still is only sitting at 1 goal, correct?
Yeah, just the one against Vegas.
Exactly, and even that was kind of like a bang bang play. Like it wasn't just like like a goal scorer's goal, that cliche that we hear.
Yeah.
But you look at the chances he's generating, like shots for per 60, he's top 5 on the team. He has the highest expected goals for per 60. And then you look at the defensive side of the puck, and you can make the case that like he's been one of their, if not their best consistently defensive players by a lot of these underlying metrics. But again, like it's good that he's being responsible. It's good that he's a net positive player pretty much every shift. But at the same time, because of his pedigree, because of his talent, you eventually want him to translate some of that play into actual tangible offense. And I do think that maybe like getting him on a power play, giving him more of those opportunities would help a lot. But you see this guy like a big winner with a winger with a hell of a shot, and he doesn't really have that facilitator down the middle of the ice to play with more times than not. The only forward or centerman that they have right now who could maybe fit that mold is Morgan Frost, and he's been in and out of the lineup like almost game to game and stretch to stretch. So I mean, obviously, with Noah Cates out of the lineup for the foreseeable future, it will mean more of Morgan Frost. But I do think the fact that the Flyers don't really have a creative player up the middle of the ice has hurt a guy like Tyson Forster and maybe prevented him from getting more of those dangerous looks for a shooter of his talent.
It's funny because in the league, when you look at the top teams in the NHL, the teams that like I look at them and go, okay, this is a team that's in that upper crust. There's a lot of murky middle teams in this league right now because with 32 teams, but that upper crust, you look at the teams, like Boston or like, the Rangers, the teams at the top of the standings and really can do something. They're all the teams that allow the fewest amount of goals per game. Like the Kings allow the least amount of goals per game at 2.37. Vegas is number 2. The Rangers number 3. Vancouver, who's off to a great start at 15-7-1, are number 4. Florida at number 5. Like that's not a mistake that those top teams also give up the least amount of goals. The Flyers are 11th in that regard, allowing just 2.82 goals per game. So let's talk about the D because there was obviously the subtraction of Provorov, and I think the thought process, myself included, was, okay, who's going to fill the minutes that Provorov played on a top pair and also have to deal with the opposition top line most of the night? And we go, okay, I don't know if it's going to have to be by committee, but it hasn't been by committee. It's been Travis Sanheim, and I know he was on the ice for all 4 goals last night. I can't really pin any of the goals actually on him. Even though he was on the ice last night. But I look at it and I go, wow, they're better defensively without Provorov here. Why is that?
It's very interesting, honestly. Like with Sanheim playing as well as he has in a number 1 role, and I think he may be leading the NHL in ice time. I'm not sure if that's a real stat, but he's played 415 minutes at 5-on-5 this season, which is absolutely bananas. And that's not even accounting for the special teams. But I think that it's obviously you've seen some guys come in here, notably Sean Walker, and do really well in, I guess, depth roles. But you can't even say Walker has been in a depth role. He's kind of been like their number 2 defenseman in a lot of ways, maybe splitting that role with Cam York. But I think it's more just everyone buying into what the coaches and the team is selling. And I think with Ivan Provorov, he didn't buy in. It was always someone else's fault. He was forcing plays. He wanted to be a player that he maybe wasn't, with worrying about point totals and getting that power play time. instead. I'm sorry. Do you hear that motorcycle outside? It's absolutely so loud right now.
Yeah, it sounds like a chainsaw.
Yeah, it might be a chainsaw. Actually, I don't know what the hell they're doing. Anyway, I'm really sorry.
That's all right.
But I think it's a lot to do with just buying what the team is selling and playing the role that you're being asked to play. And I think Sanheim's been asked to play. This thing is really getting on my fucking nerves. Getting asked to play the right side on a top pair. Now get those power play times. Sean Walker arguably playing the biggest role in his career as like a number 3. Nick Sealer playing up the lineup. Cam York finally getting a chance on the top power play unit and on the top, or not on the top pairing. And I think that you've basically gotten a lot of those problem childs out of the way. And it, hold on, I'm gonna move downstairs. Okay.
Oh no, you're all right. This guy said you can't hear anything on the stream, so no worries. It's not coming
Oh,
through.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. I thought you said that he
Yeah.
couldn't hear anything.
No.
My bad.
The mic will pick up. That's a unidirectional mic. It won't pick up a lot of ambient sound, so that's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
the
yeah,
thing-
all that to say, I think it's just a
Yeah.
lot of what the play. It has to do a lot with the players just buying into the rules that they've been given.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us didn't know a lot about Sean Walker. He fits what they're trying to do this year as compared to what they did last year a lot. He fits it very well in the way he defends and the way he moves in transition and gets the puck up the ice in transition. And you look at the Flyers D, and to me, it's markedly better. It's also the 5-man unit, but they also, they'll fly the zone like they did last year. I think that this year, well, now it's coming through.
Yeah. I could probably move downstairs if you could hold the fort for a bit here.
Yeah, I'll hold the fort. Go ahead. That is crazy. But the thing is, and I'll just continue to talk while Anthony migrates to the other floor in the domicile, is this team defends so much better because they're on offense, but more often too. And even though they haven't scored goals, and averaging only 1 goal per game in the last 4, they still are on attack way more. So they defend less, and defending less a lot of times will make you defend better and more effectively. And they still get hemmed in, like a team like Carolina hemmed them in a few times last night. And they're a team that kind of control the game. And Carolina is probably certainly one of the top 3 puck possession teams in the entire NHL. But dealing with a team like that, dealing with the Rangers as well, you saw some of those breakdowns in the D zone. But those things are going to happen in a season where you're going to have breakdowns and you're going to pay the price. When you look at the D2, Ant, there's a couple of questions here. First of all, D usage on the power play. We're seeing Sean Walker there. To me, he's just not a power play player. I don't know that he's ever done it at that level. Certainly not in LA with Drew Doughty. He was the number 1 power play guy. But when, Cam York is not getting any power play time, and they're putting Sanheim out there maybe on power play too, but why are they not using Cam York on the power play, which has been obviously an enormous struggle?
It's a very curious decision because even Travis Sanheim, for as good as he's been, I've never found him to be a particularly great power play player. Like, I find the offense that he brings and the impact he brings is in transition. And on the power play, it's very stationary, right? Zone to zone. And I think that's even why he's never excelled except until maybe this season, as a penalty kill defenseman. So I get having him as a secondary option, Travis Sanheim, but you mentioned Sean Walker, obviously guys like Nick Sealer and Mark Stahl, and now Rasmus Ristolainen or Igor Zamula. None of those guys are going to be power play options. Maybe Ristolainen if you play him down low in front of the net. But I mean, I don't know why Cam York isn't on the power play here. And I could understand that he's not even an ideal quarterback. And I think that this is maybe where, and I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me for saying this, is that the one thing about Ivan Provorov that they probably miss from that back end is his shot. I know he wasn't good at quarterback in the power play and facilitating the puck, but one thing that he had, and we saw in 1920, is that he could really get shots on net, oftentimes leading to goals on the man advantage. But I have no idea why Cam York isn't being used on the power play. It's really low-hanging fruit that he should be there. I've heard that he's one of the guys that Torts really goes after hard and really tries to engage with like that back and forth and really challenge Cam York. So maybe
Mhm.
this is kind of a tough love thing. But I'll be honest with you, with the power play as putrid as it is, I think that at a certain point you just have to do what's best for the team. And what's best for the team is probably using Cam York in that role.
Yeah, there's like we wonder about Cam York sometimes. Is there a lot of ass in his game? Is he a guy that is going to compete at that top level to maximize his skill set? And I think I think Torts probably, and a lot of coaches do. They kind of find a guy or two, and they're really hard on them to get them to break through the barrier. And sometimes it's just being, kind of being a prick and having that guy, come back at you and almost, tell you to fuck off, and that's a good thing. Where the coach is like, okay, there's something in there. Let's go. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, show me that battle. Show me that, willful intent. And with York, I remember asking Torts about this probably 2 or 3 weeks ago on Hockey and Hounds. I said, is there a killer in there in Cam York? And um, he said, I hope so, because if not, he's going to always leave you wanting more. And that's the one thing I wonder about him.
Yeah, and I think one of the things for all of the faults that a guy like Ivan Provorov had, I think one thing that Torts really respected about Ivan Provorov was that there was a killer in there. And there was a guy who would fight for every inch of the ice and someone who wanted to be the best all the time. First guy in the gym, last guy out of the gym. Ditto for on the ice practice, work ethic, and all that. And that's not to say that Cam York's lazy by any stretch, but I do think that if you want to be that top dog, that top power play guy, you have to have bit of that. It sounds kind of cliche, but that killer instinct. And if you want to be playing against the top competition on other teams night in, night out, you have to be willing to face some adversity and try and want more. Because Cam York, I don't think it's a stretch to say, is probably their most skilled defenseman. Even with as good as Travis Sanheim's playing, like I've said, I think his game his strengths come more with moving the puck, transition play, all that, getting around the ice, covering it all up. But from a stationary perspective, I think Cam York far and away is their most talented guy. And he really has to help that power play because Sean Walker, Travis Sanheim, they're not going to be the answer, certainly not long-term to do so.
Yeah, you look at York, he's got a lot of composure to his game. He doesn't panic. It's a very calm, low heart rate style of play. And I think the part of it too is, you mentioned like Provorov can get shots through on the power play. I think that was also a benefit of having a power play that ran off the half wall, because that opens up the point. My issue now is I don't know if you can get shots through the point, because I don't know if the intended purpose is to run it through the point or run it through the half wall, because I don't know. Do they have a player that can run it off the half wall? Maybe Brink is your best guy, or Frost, to run it off the half wall, but still, that's totally unproven. And then, one affects the other when predictability is the enemy of offense. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the problem, is that you don't have a guy on the back end who could get big shots through, because Ivan Provorov is gone and Gostisbehere, obviously year 3 that he's gone, and Sanheim and York aren't those guys. And your best strategy is to use the passing abilities of York and Sanheim as left shooters at the top to set up the big shots that you have from some right shooters on the left side, whether that be a Tyson Forster, whether that be an Owen Tippett. Maybe Brink is more of a facilitator, but it's kind of predictable because they have so many guys that are the same handedness and play theoretically the same role on the power play. Even Cam Atkinson is a guy that would be on that left half wall as well. Travis Konecny, although he's
totally redundant.
It's very redundant. And you look at trying to work it off the other half wall with, ideally a left shot guy. I don't think Farabee's that guy. Lawton shouldn't be on the power play. Couturier on the power play has always been better in that high slot Scott Hartnell type of position, or down low in front of the net. So I think it has become redundant and predictable just because that they don't have the talent. And I think it's because you don't have a guy to work it off the right half wall as a left shooter. You don't have a guy who can get a big shot through from the point. And all your right shooters are big shooters are right shots. So teams could just load up on that side of the ice.
Yeah. And it just, we don't see any progress there either. And I think that it's deflating when you're a team that's struggling to score and all of a sudden your power play doesn't give you even a lot of good looks, then to me that makes everybody on the team and the team struggling to score squeeze a little bit harder. It's funny. I said this on Flyers Daily. Um, Not scoring goals and guys drying up is contagious. Just like scoring goals can be contagious and everybody gets on the board and everybody eats. It's the opposite too. When a team is struggling, they don't have that one guy that is kind of recession proof from scoring on this team. I don't know if Cutter Gauthier is going to be that guy at the NHL, at least not initially. But you hope that he's one of those guys that even when the team isn't putting the puck in the net, he still finds a way to put the puck in the net. They need that.
Yeah, they need a guy who could come in and just score from distance and decide that, you know what, this puck is going in now. And to go back on the power play quickly, like I didn't even mention Morgan Frost as a creative left shooter just because he hasn't been in the lineup enough. But like if it were me running the power play, and obviously no one's ever going to ask me for my opinion, but like now that he is going to presumably be in the lineup each and every night with Noah Cates out, I would have him on the right half wall. I would actually probably put Ristolainen at the top because he does have that big shot. And for as bad as he played in Buffalo over the years, he did have a lot of success on the power play. And he has a hard shot from the top. Put Konechny in the high slot as a right shooter, and then maybe a guy like Forster on the other half wall. So then you have a good facilitator in Morgan Frost, your most creative left-handed forward, with three options to set up for one-timers. And then in front of the net, you probably put Sean Couturier as he can do that tripod move as a left shooter. So for me, that's the way I would look at it. And it makes the most sense given the talent you have at your disposal and all the handedness. But obviously, you're hoping that guy like Cutter Gauthier could be that guy who come in, be recession proof, and kind of score goals all on his own.
Yeah, you need that. And then, Michkov, but we'll talk about that at the appropriate time. And the latest we're getting into this time of year now. We've seen a couple of coaching changes already. Obviously, Jay Woodcroft got zipped out in Edmonton. And then you see what happened in Minnesota. You're starting to see some guys. DJ Smith, is he in trouble in Ottawa? You look at, Sheldon Keefe was all over his guys last night in Toronto. But we're starting to see the time when GMs are going, okay, I'm at 25% into this season. I see what my team is. I see some things I like. I see some things I don't like. And the GMs are starting to kind of squirm in their chair a little bit going, okay, how do I fix it? Is it a coaching change or is it making an acquisition or a trade? And Chris Johnston put out his, top list of trade targets. Flyers have three guys on the list. Sean Walker, Morgan Frost, and Nick Seeler. Walker's number 5 on his list. Frost is number 9. And then Seeler is number 22. Let's take them in order. For Walker to be at number 5, is there a lot of interest around the league right now in Sean Walker? And is this trade market going to heat up pre-Christmas to the point where we see deals culminated, or is this going to be after the trade freeze and the holiday?
Look, there is a lot of interest in Sean Walker, but this is not a guy that the Flyers are going to trade for a 3rd or 4th round pick. And I think that's going to be a stalemate between Danny Briere and other general managers when discussing a guy like Sean Walker because he's been so damn good. And he's a right shot defenseman. Like you rewind to 2021, David Savard got traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning for a 1st round pick at the trade deadline. I would argue that Sean Walker right now is better than David Savard was back then. Josh Manson got traded for a 1st round pick in 2022 to the Colorado Avalanche. I would have to really go look at how Josh Manson was playing. Obviously, a different style defenseman, more of like a stay-at-home Chernak Ristolainen type. But you can make the case that they're maybe on par in terms of overall quality. So if you're the Philadelphia Flyers and there is already this much interest and we're not even into December yet, are you not going to stand firm and trying to get that 1st round pick? Like I could tell you that speaking with those around the team, like if they could get 1st round pick, they're going to trade Sean Walker.
Yeah.
But they're also considering re-signing Sean Walker. Because is it better to trade Sean Walker for a 3rd and a 4th round pick, or even like a 2nd and a 5th round pick, or trade or re-sign Walker and help him be the partner to a slew of left shot defensemen who are going to be coming up through the ranks soon? And I had someone tell me this the other day, is that if you look at the percentage of post first round picks who actually turn into NHLers, like it's like 16% or something, like something absolutely bananas. And then if you get into the third round picks, it drops to like below 10%. I
Yeah, it's
wish
about
I would have
3%.
yeah, I would have. I wish I would
Yeah.
have written it down. So I think a lot of fans get hung up on just compiling assets, and I get that, right? Like if
Yeah.
you have like, let's say when you traded Zach McEwen last year, or Derek Brassard 2 years ago, or Justin Braun 2 years ago, like yeah, you just trade them for the picks that you could get. But Sean Walker's not very old. He's proven to be to this point a rock solid second pair defenseman, and you already have a lot of interest in him. So you're not going to trade him for pennies on the dollar. And like, I mean, it's way too early to say this, but I think in an ideal world, the Flyers would rather move on from Ristolainen and keep Sean Walker. Obviously, that'll depend with how Ristolainen plays, but he's looked pretty good so far in a reduced role. But I mean, they're weighing all options with Sean Walker, and this isn't a guy that you're just going to trade for a third round pick at, noon on trade deadline day. Like they really value this guy. They like this guy. They think that he could be part of the solution. So if they're going to move him, it's going to be for something close to a first round pick.
And that would put them in the 3 first-round pick category heading into the draft.
Exactly.
A couple of thoughts on that. Number one, I know people go, I'd rather trade Ristolainen, but it's a much harder trade. First of all, Ristolainen makes a lot more money, so it's harder. So you're limiting the amount of teams that can fit him, unless you're going to retain. But now you're retaining for what, 3 years? This year and 2 more. So that's number one. I that's where I think sometimes people on social media go, well, just trade Risto instead. But the cookies are not equal. And the other thing, and this is part of it too, is the Flyers are already a very small team. I mean, one of the smallest in the league.
That's a big thing. And specifically up front, I can tell you that they want to get bigger.
Yeah,
And
5 of their top 9 last night are undersized guys.
Yeah, they really want to get bigger.
Yeah.
Like I remember I brought up the name Nick Robertson to someone with the Flyers.
Yeah.
And he's actually been pretty good in Toronto this year. And it was right off the bat, like, no chance he's too small.
Yep.
They want to get harder to play against, and not just Hathaway, Delory, bottom 6 guys. I think they want those bigger guys up front
to get
and
inside.
Even on the back end. And look at the teams that have won Stanley Cups or gone to Cup finals in recent years. Like the Montreal Canadiens in 2021 went to the Stanley Cup final, aside from Carey Price being absolutely heroic in the net, because they had 4 monsters on the back end in Edmondson, Weber, Sherratt, and Petrie. You see how big the defense was for the Vegas Golden Knights last year. And to touch a bit on Risto, like I don't think his contract is that bad as many people think, especially if he plays the way he has going back to last season. 3 years, $5 million. The only issue with Risto, and I had someone tell me this the other day, is that a lot of teams will be able to find defensemen who play a similar role for cheaper, like a Nikita Zadorov or a Luke Shen last year. Like you could go in and get a guy who makes
less
that
commitment.
$1 to $3 million on a shorter term deal to do that. And then they'll go out and get paid. Like Gabranson got paid, Luke Shen kind of got paid this summer. But there is a value to Risto also because he is that right shot defenseman. So and this is completely speculative, depending what happens with the Calgary Flames and their pending UFAs on the back end, and Chris Tanev and Nikita Zadorov and Noah Hanifin. And again, this is completely speculative. I wonder if that's a team who has had trouble to attract free agents, circle back and say, okay, we need a right shot guy to play that physical role. 3 years, $5 million, because we're losing 3 UFA defensemen who are not going to want to commit here. So I think that there may be a market for Ristolainen as we progress here, but it's way too early because of teams haven't gotten there yet, especially a team like the Calgary Flames who are still trying to figure out what they are, and because Risto's only played 2 games this season.
Yeah. And look, in the lineup last night, in their top 9 last night, here to grind through. I know I'm putting the cart before the horse here when it comes to talking about playoffs, but if you want to have playoff success in the NHL, you're going to need some size up front and on the back end. And to your point, I remember seeing this tweet that in the last 12 years, the final 4 teams, conference finals and Stanley Cup final teams, the average size of their defenseman was 6'2.5", 205 pounds. You just can't make it through 4 rounds. Look at Vegas last year. Same thing. these teams that get to the finals, they all are big on the back end. And while you got some size with Sanheim, but he doesn't play as big as his frame is. And I'm not saying you got to kill guys. I don't think a guy like Victor Hedman goes out there and kills guys, but you need to have size so you don't wear down in that situation. And last night, 5 of their top 9 forwards, Brink, Atkinson, Konechny, Joel Farabee. I mean, they're all small-ish guys. Like the only big guys you had are Couturier, Paling. There's just not a lot of size out there. So, and look, then you see a team that's struggling to score and have a hard time, getting to the middle and crowding the blue paint, and you don't wonder why then.
Well, it's because they don't have lethal shooters who can shoot from distance, like let's say like an Alex DeBrincat, and they don't have big guys who could bulldoze their way to the front of the net and get to those dirty areas and get those dirty goals.
Yeah.
Like, you think about the Flyers from, 15 years ago. You had Jeff Carter, who was a very lethal shooter. You had Simon Gagne, who was a very lethal shooter. Danny Briere, had his periods where he could rip the puck from the half wall. But then you had a lot of guys who just used to bulldoze their way to the net, like a Mike Knuble, a Scott Hartnell, even a Mike Richards. Dan Carcillo had a decent season here as well. Aaron Asham, they had a bit of everything. That's why they were able to score so much, because they could score in so many different ways. Now you have a team that doesn't really have lethal shooters, and you don't really have big guys who could bulldoze their way to the net. And I think that's why a guy like Owen Tippett is someone Torts maybe wants more from and is hard on, because
more power.
Because he has that skill set to be a guy who could not only score the odd snipe from outside of a high danger area, but also use his physicality and his size and his speed to get to a more dangerous area and right in front of the net.
Yeah, I mean, the guys with size, Couturier, Forster's a decent size. You mentioned Tippett, and Paling. They were the only guys in your top 9 last night. And, then, I mean, the fourth line, Lawton undersized, but Delarier and Hathaway, but that's a fourth line. I'm not depending on that line to provide me my offense.
Exactly.
This guy messaged in and says the Flyers don't need to increase their aggregate size. They need more skill. Well, no shit. They need to increase their skill, but they got to get fucking bigger, or you're never going to get through playoffs.
I think both.
Never going to happen.
See, I think that's a statement that a lot of people fall in that trap, that it's well, you have to be big or skilled. Why?
No, you don't. Look at LA.
Well, look at LA and look at some of the best players in the NHL. Do you not know how massive Austin Matthews is?
Yeah.
He's
got an ass the size of a SEPTA bus. He is huge.
Do you not know how strong Nylander is?
Yeah.
Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, these are. I'm not saying that you have to go out and get Ryan Reeves and stick him on the power play. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that big and skilled will always prevail over small and skilled. That's just the fact of the matter, because you could play and be effective in different ways of the ice. Matthew Tkachuk. Yeah, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk. Leon Draisaitl is a beast. They're I'm not saying that you have to not have any small guys on your team. You will always have a place for a guy like a Travis Konechny. You will always have a place for a guy like Bobby Brink
or Mitch Marner.
But even Mitch Marner this year, he's struggling for his standards because he's getting boxed out from the middle of the ice and he's having trouble creating. But I mean, that's why you look at teams that have that size up front and how heavy they are up front. And I'm not saying that you only have to have those guys. They also have to be skilled. So I don't get this size versus skill thing. You just need both.
It is a skilled league. It's more skilled than ever before. But if you can also be too late, I think that's why the Islanders are a tough matchup for them. I mean, they have some big boys. You look at Anders Lee or Brock Nelson. They got some big bodies there that make it difficult for the Flyers to get to the net. And every time they play them, a goalie like Sorokin or Varlamov looks unbeatable because they have a hard time getting traffic around them.
Yeah.
Now, I think the goalies are both good, but I think the Flyers maybe help them look a little bit better because they have a hard time getting to the inside on a team like the New York Islanders. Eric says, to me, Tippett is the new Wayne Simmons without fighting. I totally disagree. I think they're very different players. First of all, Tippett can skate like the wind. Wayne Simmons was a passable skater in his prime.
Let's be honest, and I own a Wayne Simmons jersey. He was one of my favorite players for that period. Simmons was never a great 5-on-5 guy.
No.
Like, he was one of the best net front players in the league for a bit, and he was damn good down low. And once the game became more of a cycle game in the offensive zone, he was really, really effective. But I think Tippett can be way more effective in all aspects of the ice. But I do kind of see the comparison a little bit, maybe in terms of where they could fit in the lineup. That Tippett could kind of be that staple on a second line that could help you on a power play like Simmons was, but stylistically, there are a lot of differences in their game.
Jay says the Avalanche were the 8th smallest team in the league when they won. You can build teams in different ways. Absolutely. I agree with that, Jay.
For sure.
But look at the players, their most impactful players. They weren't small. Yeah, they had some small guys there, but Nathan MacKinnon is a hoss. Rantanen is a hoss. Like it's not, I guess you can't just look at it in the sheer, okay, the sum of the everything is they're a small-ish team. You got to look at the key components of the team aren't small-ish. You can have some of that, but you can't have, your key components all be that. You have to have some size. And look, we've all watched the NHL playoffs the last couple of years, and it's not the same game as the regular season. It's like a throwback to mid-90s. You got to be tough and strong, and you got to have some power.
And I think it's fair to point out that one of the things that they did at the deadline was address their lack of size, because they went out and they got a Josh Manson. They went out and, the year before, they bring in Jack Johnson, who everyone hates, I know, and Eric Johnson, 2 big guys on the back end. And then, like you said, you look at their most impactful forwards during that cup run: Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Valeri Nichushkin. They're all monsters, and they're all going to be on the ice the most often. So, yeah, if you want to look at their bottom 6 and you want to look at like their top pairing, yeah, there were probably over half the guys that were under 6 foot, but a lot of the guys who were playing the most, or let's say in defensive position or in defensive situations, like a Josh Manson, and then you look at up front where you have MacKinnon and Rantanen and Nichushkin, so big. Like, I think they're all over 6'2". There was a size aspect to that. And look, I'm not saying that there's not a one size fits all formula. There are many different ways to build a team, but I think one consistency we've seen, probably going back to, Washington's cup win in 2018, is that you need some size in significant areas of your team.
Yeah. And let's talk about what's happened yesterday. We'll wrap up on this. What happened in Chicago, a team that, wouldn't want to be a PR person for this team. There's not enough money in the world after everything that's gone down the last couple of years, the Kyle Beach situation, and all of a sudden the Corey Perry situation happens, and they can't say anything because they have to go through this process. It allows Twitter to be fucking Twitter and just get absolutely out of control. But your thoughts on what's taken place in Chicago the last couple of days, and what Kyle Davidson had to say, and this whole now ugly situation, and smack in the middle of it is Bedard by nothing of his own doing.
I just spoke about this on TSN Radio in Montreal, and I don't want to say I feel bad for the Blackhawks because of how much, stupidity they've brought on themselves. But when you look at how many people are different from, let's say, 2010 to now, like Rocky Wirtz passed away. Now it's Danny Wirtz. Kyle Davidson was not there all those years ago. Luke Richardson was not there all those years ago. Like, I kind of feel bad for the new personnel in hockey ops and business ops, and just trying to leave that negative aura in the dust. But then you have a situation like this, and who knows what actually happened. We'll probably never know what actually happened. But it's unfortunate because it's just an organization trying to turn the page, both on the ice and off the ice, in hockey club personnel and the roster. And you have the crown jewel to end all crown jewels and some other nice under the radar young pieces there. And it just gets completely overshadowed by just this unfortunate situation. And I don't even want to comment on it or speculate on it because I have no idea what happened, nor do I care. Like, I've had a lot of people DM me and reach out to me like, oh, what are you hearing? And it's just like, this is not stuff I touch, trying to do my job, because it goes beyond hockey. But you look at the player Corey Perry and what he's meant to his respective teams going back to 2020, whether it was with Dallas or Montreal or Tampa Bay. And he has been one of those better veteran bottom six guys who could provide skill because of his pedigree in the past as a former cup champion, a former Olympic gold medalist, a former Hart Trophy winner. And for it to just kind of blow up like this in Chicago of all places, like, you can't write this stuff. You really can't write this stuff. And before the season, everyone was in unison saying, yeah, this is a hell of a move by Chicago. He's the perfect type of guy you want around a guy like Connor Bedard. And then this happens. And it's just very unfortunate for everyone involved. And probably no more other than Connor Bedard.
Yeah, it's just, and it's the old tried and true dumb hockey rumor that gets recycled everywhere. So-and-so slept with so-and-so's wife. He had to be traded, whether that's Lindros and Brindamore back in the day here, or Carter and Hartnell's wife at one point. It was the dumb rumor recycling itself. It's one of those ones that people pull out of the cupboard and post on message boards, and there's no validity to it. It's tired at this point.
One thing before we wrap it up, did you want to touch on Frost at all?
Yeah. What's the market for Frost?
Not a lot. And
yeah,
I think
I can imagine.
Yeah, I can tell you that the Flyers have gotten calls on Morgan Frost, but they've realized that his market is not where it needs to be. And this kind of goes back to what we were saying about like what draft picks can turn into. And are you is it more worth it to just trade Morgan Frost for a third round pick or fourth round pick? And I don't even know what's been offered for him, but like, that's where I'm assuming my head where it's at. Or would you rather just work with it? Because they could still use Morgan Frost. And ironically enough, this one person said to me, well, when there's injuries in the lineup, he's going to get his chance. And here we are.
Yeah.
And I think that Morgan Frost is a prime example of a player that if you trade him for a mid-round pick or even a second-round pick, he's going to go somewhere else and really blossom. And, you have him under contract at a really good cap dollar until 2025. And at this point, although it's not ideal, are you more worth it to trade a guy who's one season removed from a 50-point season for like pennies on the dollar, or just work with him through the tough times? And I think it is fair to point out that maybe he's been singled out more often than deserved by John Tortorella. But either way, I don't think it makes much sense for anybody for the Flyers to trade Morgan Frost at this point in time, just because his market isn't there. And yes, his underlying process has been good, but he hasn't blown the doors off offensively when he has been in the lineup, which is what you're expecting him to do. So I think there's blame on maybe the coach's side at times, maybe the player's side at times. And I know a lot of people are just assuming that it's going to come to a head via trade, but based on the conversations I've had as early as Tuesday, or as early as yesterday morning, I really don't think that that's something that's in the cards right away, unless a team steps up and really offers the Flyers what he's worth.
And here's the thing: there's no urgency to trade him.
Yeah. Why are they under pressure?
Depressed value? It's not a cap situation. He's not blocking anybody. There is going to be injuries, and there is one now, obviously, to Cates. And Eric says, "Oh wait, I want to be here." I actually wanted this message from him. Can Frost be Cam Atkinson? They couldn't be different as players, so I will say that Frost can't be Cam Atkinson. Cam Atkinson is a guy who scored 31 in this league as a winger. Morgan Frost is such a different player than Cam Atkinson. I don't even think you have those two in the same conversation together.
Yeah.
That doesn't.
And to be fair, I do think Morgan Frost wants to be here. I think a lot of the drama that we've heard has been caused by the players' camp, and which kind of strive from very toxic and tough negotiations between the Flyers and the player's agent. And I think it's very important to point out that he has been nothing but a good teammate. That's all I've heard, is that he's taken it in stride. He hasn't moped. He hasn't sulked, which we have heard has been an issue with him in the past, maybe 2 seasons ago. But all I've kept hearing is that through all of this and all the unfortunate, chatter surrounding the situation, Frost has been nothing but just a great guy to be around. And I think that may entice the Flyers to be like, hey, you know what? It's been a tough situation for him, but he's taken it in stride and he still wants to be here. And maybe that makes them want him to make it work more here.
Yeah, no doubt. And let's wrap it up there. Read Anthony's stuff on thefourthperiod.com. Give him a follow on Twitter at @DeMarco25. And we will talk to you next time on episode 76 of Stick to Hockey Live. Everybody leave us a 5-star rating and review. We'll talk to you next time right here on Stick to Hockey Live. Have a great